We are live.
Good evening. The Combined Committee of the Whole Operations and Planning Administration is now being called to order. I would ask that you rise as you are able for the reading of the invocation. As we come together today, we recognize the great responsibilities laid upon us. Our council will always strive to understand the needs of the people we serve and to use power wisely and well. Our purpose is to establish and maintain a city of prosperity where righteousness and freedom prevails and where justice rules. We acknowledge the rich history of the land, which includes the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee peoples. Today, there are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples living and working in the city of Brantford. The intent of this acknowledgement is to recognize our responsibility to use and take care of these lands responsibly and respectfully, while remembering the generations past and considering the generations yet to come. We respect and seek to continue and promote the long-standing relationship with the First Nations, Six Nations of the Grand River First Nation and Mississauga of the Credit First Nation, and the Indigenous people who reside within the city of Brantford. Let us also not forget those who served our community and who are no longer with us, so that we continue to do the work we must in their memory. Please be seated. Mr. Clerk, has the roll been taken?
To the chair, roll call has been taken.
Are there any members of the committee that have a declaration of pecuniary interest? Excuse me. Seeing none, members, are there any items for consideration or consent that you would like separated for discussion purposes? Noting that Councillor Hunt, you can bring forward your motion to approve all consideration and consent items not separated for discussion. So first, are there any to be separated? Councillor Sicoli?
Yes, item 7.1.2, please.
7.1.2. Any further? Councillor Hunt, 7.1.4, the Brantford Accessibility Advisory Committee is automatically separated as you have an amendment.
Yeah, and I'd also like to separate 7.2.3. 7.2.3. Yes.
Are there any further? No, seeing none. Councillor Hunt, can you please, sorry? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
7.1.1 and 7.1.5.
Any further? Seeing none, Councillor Hunt, could you move the motion to approve all items not separated?
Yep, so moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Samuel, that all items for consideration consent, 7.1 and 7.2, not separated for discussion purposes, be approved.
And Mr. Clerk, could you please read the ones not separated?
Through the chair, the items subject to the vote are 7.13 Economic Development, Tourism and Cultural Initiatives Advisory Committee Report, 7.21 Museum Sustainability Plan Implementation Progress Update, 7.22 2025 Climate Action Implementation Plan, and 7.24 the minutes.
Thank you. There are no statutory public hearings or public meetings on the agenda. Sorry. Okay, let's vote then. All right. So we'll call the question on the resolution on the floor. I'm in.
The motion carries on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those councillors voting in favor, Councillors Ventilbur, Samuel, Hunt, Marty McCreary, Celeste, Caputo, Sullivan, Scully, and Mayor Davis.
Okay, we have no delegations. There are no presentations. Councillor Sicoli, could you please move your motion to put all separated items on the for consideration not previously voted on the floor, and name a seconder.
Seconded by Councillor Sullivan, that all items for consideration and consent separated for discussion purposes be approved.
Okay. And the first item then is 7.1.1.1. And that was, Mr. Mayor, you had that separated.
Thank you, Chair Celeste. I just want to commend staff on bringing forward this recommendation. This relates to the designation relates to encouraging properties that have historical significance to be designated to protect them. We've got a great stock of historical buildings in our community, and there's two ways to get to a designation. One, it's imposed on you as a landowner, which I'm philosophically opposed to. The better way is what I call through the carrot, and that is providing a benefit or incentive to having your property designated. And this is what this program does. It provides for matching grants of up to 50% to a maximum of 20,000 for any renovation to a property that's been designated that is intended to preserve some heritage aspect of that property. It's a great program. We've seen that since it was instituted in 2018, we've made various improvements to it over the years. And what's very gratifying is to see that it's being used. There are a number of applications that have been made to help preserve the stock of historical properties we have in the city. And although we haven't seen it yet, what I'm hoping over time, if we continue this program, is we'll see this act as an incentive or catalyst to other landowners voluntarily agreeing to designate a property they own that's historically significant and doing it because there's a benefit to doing it. And then also there's, I think, good reasons for helping those who take on the burden of owning and preserving a heritage property in our community, helping them with the cost of doing renovations that preserve the historical character of those properties. So all in all, it's a great program. I'm glad to see that staff are recommending that they continue on a permanent basis with significant funding.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Samuel?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. The mayor has done an excellent job actually explaining the program. I just wanted to comment that being on the Heritage Committee, I've seen firsthand the good things that have come from this grant program and how it supports folks to be able to take good care of their properties. We've seen a lot of projects come forward that may not have happened without this grant, and I'm really glad to see this coming forward tonight as well. Thank you.
Are there any further speakers to this item? Councillor McCurry?
Sure, thank you, and you're doing a splendid job so far. Just a word of encouragement for you, sir.
I need it.
This is yet another area where the municipality now is responsible for doing things the province did at one time. When I was a member of the Heritage Committee prior to my coming to this Goose group, the province of Ontario provided this program exactly as we implemented it a number of years ago. And City of Brantford staff, planning staff, Matt Reniers actually did all the work, as he often did. So it is true that this is not just an incentive for folks to designate, but it really does speak to the bricks and mortar, not to put too fine a pun on it, of heritage preservation and conservation. It allows landowners to not only maintain their property, but in some cases to restore it to original condition, to do things like putting new fenestration in, which speaks to what the original windows look like, instead of putting, as we often see, these shabby ersatz repairs into buildings, which ruins their character. So it is worthwhile to do. The funding source is specified in here. It's from a reserve that we establish. It does a lot of good in this community. It helps folks do the right thing with respect to heritage properties. And it may actually, in some cases, be the tipping point between maintaining a building and sending it to the tipping point, the landfill. So I'm pleased also to support this tonight. We haven't always been heritage friendly in this room or the other room that we used to sit in, but I'm pleased to see that everyone embraces this program.
Thank you. Further speakers? Seeing none, could you call the question, Mr. Clerk, please?
Item 711 carries on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those councillors voting in favor, councillors Van Tilburg, Samuel, Hunt, Marty McQuarrie, Celeste Caputo, Sullivan, Secoli, and Mayor Davis.
Item 7.1.2 is a review and update of heritage procedures and delegated authority, and that's Councillor Secoli.
Yes, thank you. This report is pertaining to permits for work that is being done on heritage properties. And my question of staff is regarding demolition permits. and the delegation of authority there. I just want to be sure that a denial of a demolition permit will still, it will come to this council to approve.
Through the chair, Patrick Fuser, Intermediate Planner, Long Range Planning. So under the Heritage Act, the approval of demolitions, there's no delegation to staff. So council has that authority in all cases.
Okay, so that's not changing here, and that's what I wanted to be sure of. Thank you so much.
Call the question, please, Mr. Clerk.
Item 712 carries on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those councillors voting in favor, councillors Ventilberg, Samuel, Hunt, Martin McQuarrie, Celeste, Caputo, Sullivan, Seguli, and Mayor Davis.
7.1.3 Economic Development, Tourism and Cultural Initiatives Advisory Committee Report 2025-01-29. I believe that's Councillor Hunt. So which one are we at? 7.1.4? Oh, sorry. Sorry, Councillor Hunt, I've got this wrong. Yeah, you have an amendment for 7.1.4, the Brantford Accessibility Advisory Committee.
I do, moved by myself and seconded by, Councillor Van Tilburg. That clause B be amended to that the release of funds in the amount of $10,000 from the Council Priorities Reserve Fund RF 0558 for the implementation of the campaign be approved. And just if I can speak to it, this is a request from staff to clarify which council reserve fund the funds are to come from.
Sorry, who is your seconder?
Councillor Van Tilburg.
Councillor Van Tilburg. Okay. Are there any other speakers to the amendment? No, seeing none, could we call the question on the amendment, please?
The amendment carries on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those councillors voting in favor, councillors Ventilberg, Samuel, Hunt, McQuarrie, Martin, Celeste, Caputo, Sullivan, and Mayor Davis.
Any speakers to the main motion as amended? Councillor McCreary?
Chair, thank you, and through you to staff. I seem to recall for the last 15 years or so, having the year 2025 identified as being a benchmark or milestone year with respect to AODA compliance. I wonder if there's a member of staff that can speak to that tonight.
So through the chair, yes, originally the date for the AODA was 2025 as written and adopted by the provincial legislation. To date, we have not received an update on those due dates per se. The city itself has met most of those due dates. We are actively working on increasing the accessibility for the website. And that is the only thing that is outstanding for the city of Brantford. Provincially, of course, there's much more work to be done. And we are just waiting updates on what those new standard dates look like.
Jenny, thank you for that.
Sorry, seeing none, we call the question, please.
Item 714 has amended, carries on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those councillors voting in favor, councillors Ventilberg, Samuel, Hunt, Martin McQuarrie, Celeste, Caputo, Sullivan, Seguli, and Mayor Davis.
Thank you. Next is 7.1.5, which is separated by the mayor. It's regarding the 2006 municipal election. alternate options for voting, and I believe we'll have a small presentation. I don't know, is the clerk going to be doing that? Apparently he is. Go ahead, Chris.
Through the chair, Chris Goche, City Clerk, Director of Clerk Services. I'll provide a quick overview of the report. To my left is Emma Vokes, Deputy Clerk, Jill Binkley, the Supervisor of Elections, Licensing and Administration, and online we have Alex. He is our Manager of IT Security. We're here today before you to seek for council's endorsement to continue the conduction of online voting and in-person voting for the 2026 election. Some background information: in 2014, council passed a bylaw allowing staff to use online and in-person voting. So staff does have the authority to continue to go through those avenues. However, we wanted to come to council and get their endorsement to continue going with online voting. Some information: in 2014, when we first implemented the online voting system, we had around 15% of the electorate voting online. In 2018, we had 37% of the electorate voting online. And in 2022, the past election, we had 57% of the electorate voting online, which indicates that's the preferred option for voting in Brantford. We've also seen similar trends in the province. So this past election, half of Ontario municipalities, 222, had online voting as well. There's a lot of benefits with online voting: accessibility, ease of access, reduced costs for ballots, reduced staffing costs. We're not limited to the facilities that are available to us. Also, it helps persons with mobility issues, working families, students who don't live at home. However, with all those benefits, there have been concerns in the past across the province with the lack of standardized standards for online voting. I wanted to come to council today to discuss those standards. So in December of last year, the Digital Governance Institute of Canada implemented and created these standards. It was in consultation with 100 thought leaders across the field, cybersecurity experts, election administrators, as well as vendors. Some of these standards that they have in place now will have vendors prove how they're going to respond to any type of cyber attacks, cyber security. So some examples of that: vendors will now have to conduct penetration tests, which is essentially hiring a third-party contractor to try to penetrate their system, to hack the system. They have to do load tests, which is mimicking a high volume of traffic on the website to test out the servers. There's also the use of end-to-end verifiability, which essentially means once a ballot is cast, there's an audit trail. Once a ballot's cast online, it gets encrypted. It goes into the digital ballot box encrypted. It doesn't become decrypted until we close the elections and we call the results. Within that process itself, we're able to have audit logs and to see the progress from when the ballot was cast to when it was opened. There's also a thing called verbose logging, which is the act of continuously searching the software for any programs or application that are running in the background. By doing that, the election vendors will be able to identify any programs, software applications that aren't supposed to be there. In addition to that, this election cycle, we are moving away from MPAC for the voters list. Elections Ontario now is the one responsible for the voters list. The benefit of that is that the provincial elections are usually before the municipal elections, so we'll have a more up-to-date voters list. In addition, they pull data from the Ministry of Transportation, from the Ministry of Health, from MPAC, and from a wide sort of government agencies, we're pretty confident that we're going to see less discrepancies with the voters list. So we're optimistic about that. It's going to reduce some of the frustrations that we had last elections with people getting voter information letters sent to their home when they didn't live there anymore. So an updated voters list is going to help us get more accurate sending of the voter information letters. We're also going to, we're exploring adding potential on the envelope, the infractions of, it's a federal crime to open someone's mail. It's a provincial crime under the Municipal Elections Act to vote on behalf of somebody. So we're taking proactive measures to ensure that the public is educated about the potential repercussions of opening someone's mail and voting on their behalf. With online voting, there are risks involved. However, it's all about risk management. And so we feel that with the standards, with our own risk assessment, we have the proper procedures, protocols, and policies in place to mitigate a lot of those risks. And we're confident that with the new standards, it will provide the public with that confidence as well. And that's pretty much my overview.
Thank you, Chris.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One thing we've seen over the last decade or two is a dramatic decline in the voter turnout for municipal elections. And I think to address that, certainly we want to make it as easy as possible for people to vote. However, we have to guard against possible fraud. And you're quite right, Mr. Clerk, that even with in-person voting, there's always an element of risk, someone impersonating a registered voter. But when it comes to online voting, I wonder if you could tell us in pretty simple layman's language, how do you deal with the two risks? And one risk would be someone hacks the system, they get into this computer system and they manipulate the voter results from working like actually inside the software system. That's what hacking is. So why should we be confident that the system that staff proposed be used in the next municipal election will not be hacked?
Through the chair, it's the development of those standards. We attach those standards to the council report that's before you today. It's very robust. It's going to put the onus on the vendors to prove to us that they have those systems in place. We've done our research. Our manager of IT security looked at the standards, ISO certification, all the back end type of programs, and all the with the development of those standards, we are confident that the risk is low. The process is pretty streamlined. There's also redundant firewalls, intrusion detection systems. So we feel pretty confident that with all of those mechanisms in place, that the risk is low.
So the other risk would be, because with online voting, what happens is you receive in the mail your voter notice and it has in it a code number, and you have to use that code number to access the system and vote online. Theoretically, that could be subject to some risk if someone gives away their voter letter to somebody else, or somebody goes down a street and scoops a bunch of these out of a mailbox. How do you guard against that? How do you prevent that type of fraud from happening?
Well, firstly, it's a serious crime. You know, we are going to be working with the police proactively with our bylaw officers. We're going to be providing more public education on the repercussions of that. We haven't received any complaints from anybody saying somebody voted on my behalf. To this point, I haven't received a formal complaint. It is possible, but you're committing a crime. We're hoping that, you know, putting the infractions on the actual envelopes will help deter some of that. We also have an online voting election team that on a hourly basis, they run reports with the high frequency of electors who vote from different IP addresses. And we're able to identify if a location has a large number of electors voting. Usually it's a library, people who are coming to the library and voting. So from that standpoint, we believe that we will have more public education. We're going to work more proactively with the police, with our bylaw officers, and we're confident that those will address those
So
issues.
one last question. So the IP address, every connection to the internet has an IP address. Right. So for example, my house, there might be several people using a computer and connecting to the internet, but we'll all be going through one IP address for our residents, correct?
Correct.
All right. So what do you do if you see a number of votes coming out of one IP address that is not a public IP address like the library? What's the procedure to deal with that?
That would deal with the intrusion detection system that's in place through the standards. And we'd have those protocols in place to address that.
Thank you. Councillor Van Tilburg.
Thank you, Chair. And the mayor went through my grilling list, but I went through many of those things with Chris before when he told me this was coming up. The biggest thing that I had noticed that hasn't been covered, but it has been said by you, was the voters list that had previously been provided by MPAC. They were pretty much a dog's breakfast, and there was a lot of complaints regarding the mismatching of the voters list and how they were out of date. People hadn't lived in many places for years, for many years. Sometimes 2 or 3 different names of within one household would show up with voter cards. So you've said now that it's going to be in the hands of Election Ontario. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And would it be your assumption that this most recent election from Elections Ontario will update those voter rolls that we will receive?
That's correct.
So at most, we will be 18 months behind in what had people that could move about or what have you.
Yep.
All right. Is there any process in between that period that Elections Ontario refines the voter list, or do you know if they just work from today?
So we work with Elections Ontario. We advertise on our website. We lead people to their website to update their voter information. Through the back end, there's a time frame under the act where the clerk can do some data cleansing. We typically go through thousands of duplicate electors, duplicate street addresses. So we do a lot of work in the background to get it to as perfect as possible. Throughout the year, Jill's team goes through deceased electors and we remove them from the voters list as they come in. So with electors being able to update their own information, it's that public education campaign, that aspect of it, telling the public, update your information, and the back end, our job is to look at those duplicate electors, look at new developments to see if they're captured in the GIS system on the voters list. And so it's kind of a two-pronged approach.
Okay, and the other part is, does a voter's IP address at the time have to be within the boundaries of the city or Canada?
No.
They don't. And one more, beyond my pay grade, I have an IP address, but if I'm using a VPN, do I not have a different IP address?
I'm not
Can you
really
get back to me
familiar
on
with
that for our next meeting?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions? Seeing none, can we call the question, please?
Item 715 carries on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those councillors voting in favor, councillors Van Tilburg, Samuel, Hunt, Martin McCreary, Celeste, Caputo, Sullivan, Scully, and Mayor Davis.
Our final item is 7.2.3, Councillor Hunt. It's the Brantford Accessibility Plan for 2025-84.
Thank you. And through you, I just wanted to, point out a few items. So our accessibility plan, has, a new addition this year, which is the accessible washroom, universal washroom at the Brandling Community Center. This was not in previous plans. It was also not in the 5-year capital plan for the Brandling Community Center. And through the efforts of, our staff, Director of Parks and Rec, our previous Director of Parks and Recreation and our current one, the Brandling Community Center is a shared facility with the city of Brantford and both of the school boards. And we were able to bring forward to the 3 partners the fact that this is the largest community center in the city and does not have a universal washroom. In fact, the washrooms at the Brandling Community Center are designed for elementary school children. And so I initially was bringing this forward during budget for a capital project, and we did not have to do that. The all 3 partners recognized the need for this universal washroom to be installed at the Brandling Community Center. And we were able to do it with funds that we had earmarked for accessibility improvements. So I just wanted to point that out. I think it's a great news story. It's certainly a great news story for the Brandling Community Center that is finally going to have a universal washroom. It was built in 1987. And as I said, the current washrooms in that community center are designed for elementary school children. So this is a very much needed addition to that community center. So those are my comments on that. And also kudos to our staff, Jenny, for the work on our multi-year accessibility plan. Always great to see improvements happening in our community. So thank you for that.
Are there any other speakers to this item? Seeing none, we call the question, please.
Item 723 carries on a recorded vote of 9-0. Those councillors voting in favor, councillors Ventilor, Samuel, Hunt, Murray, McCreary, Celeste, Caputo, Sullivan, and Mayor Davis, noting councillor Scully was out of the room at the time of the vote.
That's it for separated items. We have two resolutions on this evening's agenda. The first one is, Councillor McCreary, can you, please move your resolution and state your seconder?
Chair, thank you. Councillor Martin will be the seconder, and the resolution reads as follows. Whereas the Council of the Corporation of the City of Brantford during each term of council or from time to time conducts reviews of municipal code chapters bearing upon procedures and code of conduct. And whereas chapter 16 of the municipal code was last reviewed in 2020, and whereas the Integrity Commissioner submitted his report on 25 November regarding the code of conduct violation of Councillor Richard Carpenter, and whereas the Integrity Commissioner recommended that not only a penalty be imposed on Councillor Carpenter, but also that amendments be made to the code of conduct to provide greater clarity to members. Now, therefore, be it resolved that a task force be created with a mandate to review the Brantford Municipal Code Chapter 16 Code of Conduct for members of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Brantford and of its local boards. And that the task force be comprised of 3 members, those being Mayor Kevin Davis and 2 additional members of council to be named by Mayor Davis. And that the task force will be supported by clerk's office staff and utilize the resources of the Integrity Commissioner. And that a task force will present its final report to City Council on or before the 27th of May, 2025. There are some key takeaways from what's in this resolution this evening. First of all, reference to Councillor Carpenter regarding penalty does not refer to a financial penalty. It simply refers to the recommendation of the Integrity Commissioner. Secondly, the mayor is empowered by his strong mayor powers to create and populate committees. Third takeaway, province of Ontario is in the process of reviewing codes of conduct for all municipalities. I will remind members of this committee that they are also in the process of reviewing the Police Services Act and have been doing so since about 2019. So I think it's imperative that we look after our own house and not rely upon the province to do this. Because some of us will be retired by the time the province may weigh in on a revised code for us. And I'm sure there's a fourth thing that I had in mind, but it's completely slipped my mind. Oh, yes, of course. So we do this on a regular basis. It's a regular thing that we do here. We've done it a number of times. We did it, I'm not sure if we did it last term. But I think it's important that we do it to make sure that we're current here and to make sure that we are recognizing some of the circumstances that have led to these code of conduct complaints in past. And, you know, perhaps offer some greater clarity to the community and to members of council. And I can't think of a reason not to support this.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I quite agree with Councilor Curry that a review of our code of conduct is appropriate. This is the time to do it. One, because we've had a number of integrity commissioner reports, investigations that have shed some light on how our code of conduct is being interpreted and applied. But also it was 5 years ago, Mr. Chair, that we did a major review and upgrade and updated the code of conduct. And it really hasn't been reviewed in some detail for over 5 years. So I think now's the time to do it. And I think it should be this council doing it in this term for the benefit of the incoming council. So far as the selection of the 2 additional members to be named by myself, I expect that if you're interested, you will submit an application to me with a resume and a standard list of questions I'll ask you to respond to. If you don't want to undergo that, then I'd suggest you amend this and just have council appoint those 2 additional members.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt.
Yes, in looking at this, I guess I'm questioning, is council the right body to be reviewing our code of conduct? And should that not be another body, or at least with the input of another body? So when appropriate, I'd like to introduce a referral on this resolution.
Deferral is always in order. We need a seconder.
Seconder is Councillor Sambaugh.
Councillor Sambaugh. Yeah, the deferred to where?
So the referral would be to staff to provide.
Is it a referral or a deferral?
Referral. So
Referral,
referring it
okay.
to staff. For a report, to come back in Q2 of 2025, outlining how other municipalities have conducted their review of the code of conduct, how this council reviewed the code of conduct in 2020, and recommendations from the integrity commissioner on the review of code of conduct.
Okay. To the referral, Councillor McCreary.
Better staff might answer those questions now.
Through the chair, so under the Municipal Act, the requirement is for council to pass their own code of conduct. Similar to the procedural bylaw, council determines how they wish to govern themselves. The last time we had a code of conduct task force, I believe we had a representation of 7 members of council. I may be wrong, but the power to create, to amend, to establish codes of conduct lies with council.
Yes. Having heard staff's response, and I would rule that the amendment's out of order.
Would council not benefit from the information in terms of how other municipalities? I said, would council not benefit from the review in terms of recommendations from the integrity commissioner and how an environmental scan of how other municipalities do it?
Okay, I think we're debating it here and it's been ruled out of order.
Thank you.
So we're back to the regular as presented. And we're with Councillor Van Tilburg.
Where does the expertise come from that the committee interacts with? council's supposed to do it, where the brains come from.
Through chair, I believe the resolution cites there'll be assistance from the integrity commissioner. So as part of their services, they will help facilitate that.
Are they charging us when that happens?
Yes, but we have a budget for that.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Further, Councillor Sikoli?
Yes, thank you. I will remind everyone that policy is different from bylaw in that policy is fluid and policy can change a little more easily than, say, bylaw. And as we identify ways that we could be doing something better or different or make improvements, or there's a gray area or something is vague, we have an obligation to review that and to make sure that we have the best policy before us to guide us as we're moving forward. This is a policy of council. It's no different than us making changes to our heritage policy as we did earlier this evening, or our purchasing policy as we'll probably be doing in the future. So I think this isn't coming out of thin air. This was a recommendation from the integrity commissioner that we look at this. He identified maybe some gaps in our policy, and we have an obligation to maintain the integrity of this council through our code of conduct. And it's been identified that there are some gaps. There are some ways we could be doing this better. Maybe it's not clear to some of us on what should be in there or how it's up for interpretation. So I'm going to be supporting this. I don't think we need to get into the nitty gritty of who's sitting on there. I think there is appropriate staff here at the city that can provide the expertise and can guide us through this project. And at the end of the day, it will come back to council for us to review and vote on and make any suggestions of anything different that we feel we should be doing on the floor at that time. So I'm going to be supporting this. And thank you for bringing this forward, Councillor McCreary.
Okay, Councillor Samuel.
So I agree that it should be looked at, and when appropriate, I have an amendment I'd like to make.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, I said that I do agree that we should be looking at this, and when appropriate, I would like to make an amendment.
Okay, I think we have one more speaker in the queue anyway, ahead of that. Councillor Caputo,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great job.
we're hanging in there.
I'm going to be supporting this. There was comments made tonight about whether or not do we have the expertise or not. I don't think we're going to be looked upon to actually rewrite the entire policy. I think it has to be looked at to see where there's opportunities that the accountability of this group of us have to be held to. And I think that we are more than capable of being able to do that with the advice given to us by the Integrity Commissioner. And I'm sure that the clerk's office will also have some input into that as well. So I'd like to support this without having any amendments made to it. Thank you.
Are there any first-time speakers before we go to amendments? Seeing none, Councillor Samuel.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, the amendment I would like to make is that council as a committee appoints the other participants on this committee instead of just having the mayor do it.
Okay, and do you have a seconder?
And I guess I'm seeking a seconder.
Councillor Hunt.
Sorry, through the chair, perhaps the amendment can be to amend clause B and at the same time include the names of those councillors. That may be a little bit easier.
Sorry, it's just clarify what you just said about including the names, because
So through the chair, the amendment can be to that clause be amended to include the following members of council. And we can list them in there.
so my intent behind this was to have this committee here vote on who the additional members would be. So that was the piece I wanted to amend. So instead of having it say that Mayor Davis would be appointed or choosing the members, it would be this committee of council choosing the members.
Mr. Chair, if I might call a point of order. I believe the amendment is completely contrary to the meaning of clause B, that the mayor be responsible for naming the committee. Having us do it is completely contrary to B. And I guess in my opinion, what would be appropriate would be simply to vote down B and then introduce something else. Separate the question.
I think that makes sense. So if you think that the appointments should be made by council, you'll vote no and then introduce, your, at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Are there any other first time? Are you a first time?
No, I'm not.
No, you're not. I've got you here. Okay, I guess then we're going to second time with Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I think that, probably owe some members of council to explain what procedure I'd follow. And first of all, I'd say that I had a critical role in the preparation of the 2020 code of conduct, because prior to that, we really didn't have much of a code of conduct. And so we had a very small committee. The actual code of conduct was written by myself, Heidi DeVries, and the Integrity Commissioner. Three of us came together and looked at other codes of conduct and looked at it in the context of Brantford and our council. And then we reviewed it with the committee. They made some changes. And then, of course, council weighed in on it as well. So the procedure that I would follow would be hopefully having at least two members of council willing and ready to work very hard at this. Process I'd recommend that the committee follow is we sit down with the Integrity Commissioner, get the Integrity Commissioner's advice as to where he sees there a need for amendments, additions, deletions from our code. Obviously doing the same thing with city staff, and then the members themselves, what ideas they have. And then we canvass the larger council as well, those that aren't members, to determine if there are concerns. And then the small committee sitting down the Integrity Commissioner and drafting a proposed amendments to our current code. I don't think there'll be a lot of changes, and then bringing that back to council for approval. So I'm prepared to select the two if that's the will of council. I'm prepared to accept two to be appointed by council. I'll say this, if I'm the one that's going to be selecting them, I will ask you to speak to me after the meeting and tell me if you're interested and what does he have in mind. And, I'll make a decision, which I guess Councilor McCreary is right. I mean, that is in accordance with the provisions of the Strong Mayors legislation. Although I'm quite content for council to do it, or if you want me to do it, I'll do it. So, I hope that might be of some assistance.
Any other speakers? Seeing none, we'll call the question on the resolution as presented.
Are we splitting the B, separating B from that or not? Or what is it? C, B, B?
Through the chair, we can vote through all the,
Separated out.
yes, we can vote through like on the item. If a member of council wants to vote individually on clause B, we can do that as well. Any member of council can request a vote for clause B separately.
We would first vote on A and C, then we would vote on B.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Did somebody ask for a separation yet?
No, they haven't. Does anybody want to separate anything? No. Okay, we're just voting then on as presented.
Councilor Solomon, if I can please have your vote. Thank you. Resolution 8.1 carries on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those councilors voting in favor, Councilors Ventilbor, Samuel, Hunt, Martin McCurry, Last Caputo, Sullivan, Spoli, and Mayor Davis.
We have a second resolution. It's Councilor McCreary again. If you could move your resolution, Councilor McCreary, and state your seconder, please.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Seconder is Councilor Martin. The resolution is as follows. Whereas City Council in December 2014 approved that an honorarium shall be paid to the members of the City of Brantford's Committee of Adjustment in the amounts listed below, namely $70 per meeting for the chair and $50 per meeting for all other members. And whereas a review of this honorarium has not occurred since 2014, now therefore be it resolved that city staff be directed to survey surrounding municipalities on the honorariums paid to their Committee of Adjustment members and bring back a report to the appropriate committee of the whole meeting with their findings and recommendations relating to an appropriate honorarium for the committee members. Excuse me, and that the honorarium bylaw be updated to reflect the honorarium rates paid to committee of adjustment members at that time. And I hope I've written this so that it's relatively self-explanatory. I believe I have, but I continue to be surprised. So these folks, they're not the same people, of course, but we've maintained the same rates since 2014. And it may be that it's an opportune time to reevaluate those, and if necessary, to increase them or decrease them, as the case may be. If the other communities are chiseling their community of adjustment members, maybe we want to do it downward. So that's an opportunity too. So I would appreciate everybody's support. I hope I've pleased you with the content of this resolution, and perhaps it may sail through without amendment.
Anything further on the chiseling? No. No, seeing none, we'll call the question on the resolution.
Item 8.2 carries on a recorded vote of 10 to 0. Those councillors voting in favor, councillors Ventilber, Samuel, Hunt, Martin, McCurran, Celeste, Caputo, Sullivan, Scalia, and Mayor Davis.
We have two notices of motion on this evening's agenda. The first one is Councillor Samuel, could you please read the title of your notice of motion?
Declaration of Food Insecurity Emergency in Brantford, in the city of Brantford. Thank you.
Okay. And the second one is Councillor Van Tilburg. Just read the title, please.
I don't know. I just closed up. What the title is on it. I forgot about the notice of the motion. What's on there?
I think it says enhancing facility rental terms. Of use.
Enhancing and facility rental terms.
You did that well. Further, that's it. We are adjourned.